Albertans, Canadians, and if anyone else wants to take a sober look at yourself right now, you need to leave Canada. Canada is not what you thought it was. Canada is a Marxist hellhole. And by the way, Alberta, the rest of Canada despises you. That Americans won't. Yeah. Americans will welcome you with open arms. Alberta. Okay. In Alberta, all references are publicly available. Conservatives won the popular vote by a 2-1 margin. Okay. Jeez. 2 days ago, Politico ran this headline: "The quiet threat to Canadian unity isn't Quebec, it's Alberta." And the reason, when I grew up in Quebec, right, Quebec wanted to separate all the time from Canada, and they would have these referendums, but it never really happened. Now they're looking at Alberta. And there was a poll on April 6th as far as how many Albertans would vote for independence. They said if the Liberals won, 30%.
Jeez.
I think that number can get quite a bit higher. If we cut through the fog a little bit and actually get to the reasons that Alberta, I would argue, not should, Albertans, Canadians, and if anyone else wants to take a sober look at yourself right now, you need to leave Canada. Canada is not what you thought it was. Canada is a Marxist hellhole. And by the way, Alberta, the rest of Canada despises you. That Americans won't. Yeah. Americans will welcome you with open arms. This isn't just trolling. It's not 51st state and you're subservient. It's territory or a state, and you now have access to the world and your people can flourish. If you choose to stay with Canada, you will wither on the vine and die. And I'll make the case as to why other Canadians don't want you to be a part of their utopia. Reason number one, okay? That's what Ottawa does not share your values whatsoever. Ottawa, for those who are American, that's basically their equivalent of, Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. It's kind of silly to us Americans, but I get that it matters to you.
Ottawa what?
Pretty much. So, Carney, he has extensive ties to China and the CCP, beyond the LGBTQ AIP, beyond the crazy taxation, beyond the liberalization of all social, cultural issues and removal of God from your country's town squares. He directly aligns himself with the CCP, ergo your liberal government will. So the CCP, unlike what they tried to accuse the United States elections of being controlled by Russia. Remember that whole thing? CCP pushed online influence campaigns to get Carney elected. This is verifiable. This comes from the CBC, to be clear. In 2017, Carney met with Xi Jinping in private at Davos as China was trying to fight Trump in a trade war back then. Now, China is importing record amounts of Canadian oil to offset what's happening with the United States. And Carney has said that they need to open up relations more with China. So they want to narrow relations with the United States, open them up with China. And this is why the left will have to eventually implode. But you have to be the one here. You have to be the one pulling that ripcord, Alberta. It's one thing to say, hey, we have a problem with the United States and these reciprocal tariffs. It's another thing to say, Donald Trump is a fascist and he doesn't respect human rights. So we're going to align ourselves with China. That it's not a moral virtue. That tells you it's about money. And the money, if you track it with Carney, is it's hair-raisingly scary.
Yeah, and under Trudeau, the Chinese military actually trained with the Canadian military.
Yeah.
So it seems like they're just using Canada as basically a way to get at us.
Yes. And here's the thing, Albertans, and all of you Canadian conservatives, I hope you understand, when we say that Canada is a bad neighbor, we're talking about people in positions of power who allowed the Chinese military to train with them.
In Canada.
Yes.
Do you guys understand it? Alberta, put some distance between yourselves and these guys. Reason number two, Alberta, you guys will have more control over your own destiny and be a more prosperous nation or state. To give you an idea, across all levels, Canadians pay higher income tax and sales tax than Americans. It's unbelievable. To give you an idea, the highest individual tax rates too. In the United States, it kicks in about $626,000. Canada is $246,000. My home province of Quebec, the provincial rate was 20-something%, and it kicked in. Now I think it kicks in at $120,000. Back in the day, it was below six figures because you're considered really wealthy. No one there has disposable income. Alberta, it doesn't need to be this way. You can have the kind of tax burden that we have here in the United States. Wouldn't that be a nice relief? It would also, by the way, allow Alberta to negotiate, if let's say they become some kind of a territory, not the 51st state, to negotiate independently with the United States. That would be a huge benefit considering the energy industry in Alberta and how that is dictated by the rest of Canada, by people in Ottawa who, by the way, don't want Alberta to have their thriving energy industry. Which brings us...
If they were a territory and they had to negotiate trade between the United States and do the same thing with Canada, they would learn quickly that it would be easier to deal with us.
Alberta, you have a choice. You want your energy going at rock bottom prices to China with a wink and a nod? Or do you want to be in control of your own destiny and choose to trade and choose to engage in trade as far as your energy with the United States? Or again, be a state where I can't imagine a more prosperous Alberta. Reason number 3. This brings us to opening up that energy sector. To give you an idea, a lot of Americans don't know this. Alberta accounts for 84% of all oil production. And almost half of all U.S. oil imports are from Alberta. There's a lot of red tape. There's also sometimes you can get crude oil and then it has to be refined and sent back. Wouldn't it be nice to just be able to do business together? Wouldn't it be nice to not have to go through Ottawa, to go back to you guys, to then maybe deal with the states, even though now people like Carney don't want you to because reciprocal tariffs? It would also allow the United States, by the way, to have access to far more oil and energy and not have to open up new drilling because you guys already have the capabilities. It would be a benefit to the United States. It would be a benefit to Canada. It would also allow us to negotiate other tariffs if they exist. If you're not a state, if you're a state, there would be no tariffs. As far as what industries could reduce the cost of living for Canadians, like dairy, for example, like consumer goods that you could get for significantly less money. So you could have far greater employment because now you have the economic might of the United States along with your natural reserves, and you could have a much lower cost of living. Just to give you an idea, this weekend, other Canadians don't want you to have your autonomy, Alberta. This is what happens with totalitarian regimes. And when I say totalitarian, I'm talking about the regime that froze truckers' bank accounts. And many of those truckers, by the way, were Albertans. That's a huge part of the industry there in Canada.
Yep.
They froze your bank accounts and seized your assets for speaking out against said regime. And then you have the media in Canada that condemns you who voted for conservative change 2-1. An op-ed from the Toronto Star was titled, Perhaps it's time Alberta does go it alone and says goodbye to Canada. In the article, this author raged at the Alberta Premier, Danielle Smith, for wanting to expand your own pipelines.
Jeez.
Why? Wokeness. Cultural Marxism. In other words, it's the lifeblood of your economy. You have the right to that. Not according to people in Toronto and Ottawa.
They hate you.
They wrote this. If Smith has any sensitivity to people elsewhere in Canada, including Indigenous peoples who might object to having pipelines traversing their land, she doesn't show it. I mean, how much Windex do you guys need to huff? You can't have pipelines going through your land. You know this benefits everybody. Well, should we go back to living off the land and hunting the buffalo to extinction and having zero respect for nature, burning all of our crap and trash like many Native American tribes did? Or should we go back to their law of the land where they were warring with each other and scalping women and children alive? You guys looked into the Algonquin and Iroquois, these are the primary tribes in eastern Canada. That's where I was raised. I don't necessarily know which tribes were the most prolific there in Alberta. So what's the implication? So because of Indigenous people in other provinces, Toronto and Ottawa should tell you, Alberta, what you can and can't do with your energy. Oh, and by the way, we're also going to tell you where it goes. We're going to sell it at rock bottom prices to China because America bad. This seem like people who represent you? Do these seem like your countrymen? That's the question. Canada, I want you to ask yourself, Albertans, do these people seem like your countrymen? It's a different question today than it was even 10 years ago, 5 years ago. You basically had a referendum. You've been squeezed. Your country's becoming a catastrophe. And the rest of Canada who hates you says, yep, we want more of the same. And you can bet they are going to tighten the screws on you, Alberta, because you have not been playing ball with them.
And they're financing part of the people that are coming against them, essentially, because $20+ billion, I believe it was last year or 2 years ago, was what they basically sent out above the benefits they received from the federal government. So they're subsidizing all the rest of these people's lives to be able to do this. They'd be richer if they didn't.
Yep.
Not just on the tax breaks alone, just on money going out and benefits coming in.
Change subsidizing the rest of a country who can't stand you to profiting from a nation who welcomes you. So yeah, I
Or
get it.
at least indifferent.
Yeah.
I guarantee you there would be a lot of Americans who would be very happy.
Oh, yeah.
It would be the first time that you guys had the backbone to say no. This would be the first time you actively fight something. It's different with the monarchy. Look, I know that I'm kind of insulting you here, but I'm telling you that America has a very different history. We've had to fight for this. It's different from Canada. I know that there are fights throughout history, but not to the same scale. It's your chance to do it, and you can do it without the same level of risk, without the same level of bloodshed. But I'm telling you, they will bleed this province dry. What they have been doing isn't working, and they're doing it in the name of hating your values. Which brings us to reason number 4. You do this, there really wouldn't be any resistance, just to be clear. Like the likelihood of a war, maybe it's more than 0%, but it's pretty much 0% statistically. Kind of like your chances in the United States of America as a heterosexual, monogamous male getting AIDS. It's statistically 0.
Yeah.
I know. It's crazy. You start meeting people in Los Angeles porta potties. Guess what? It goes up a little bit. So Canada effectively spends nothing on its military. And as Trudeau said, being the horrible neighbor that he is, and Carney's an extension of Trudeau, Canada won't even reach its 2% commitment to NATO until, which they agreed to initially. That's the contract. They won't honor their contract. They won't begin to honor their contract until 2032. Sorry, right clip. And another reason to separate. Here's another right clip.
As we continue such investments, Canada fully expects to reach NATO's 2% of GDP spending target by 2032.
Said that like a mic drop.
Guys, look, we asked for change. They're changing. So Carney apparently is saying that maybe he can do it slightly quicker.
In NATO. It's not just about setting a target between now and the end of the decade, but it's also spending that money wisely and effectively, and above all, as much as possible, potentially the majority.
One sec, they said it was the wrong spot.
But he said by the end of the decade, so 2030.
Okay,
so
by
he's
2030.
moving it up 2 whole years? Really?
Let me be clear. It's not about spending the money wisely and effectively, Carney. It's about spending the money because you fucking promised you would.
Yep.
I say this as a half Canadian. Pardon the language. This idea that they're not great neighbors. If you had let's say you had a storm, a hurricane, and you and your neighbor have a fence, and you say, hey, you know what, I'm going to put up a fence myself, but you know we can put up a better fence that'll withstand the next storm if we go halvesies on it. And your neighbor says, sure, absolutely. You pay for it. He never gives you a dime and then starts decorating it and putting holes in it and using it as his archery wall. That's what Canada has been doing. And you know what, Alberta? You can be free from that baggage because it's not your fault. But we are holding all of you accountable for this. All of you. Hey, if something goes down, we won't protect the rest of Canada, but we'll protect you.
There you go.
That's the agreement at this point. To give you an idea, they spend $2.1 trillion on their military. That's 1.37% of their GDP. They have not honored their contract. The United States, $27 trillion. It's 3.5% of their GDP. Look, and I get it. This is an issue that has.
Those are GDP numbers, by the way. Those are the GDPs, and that's the percentage they spend. We don't spend $27 trillion. So just wanted to make sure it came out a little weird.
What did I say?
It sounded like you were saying they spent trillions of dollars on the military. They didn't.
No, 27 trillion is our GDP, and we spent 3.4% of that.
Yeah, we spent 3.4%. I apologize. Yes, 3.4% of our GDP, 27 trillion. Okay, you guys got it. The references are available sometimes, especially when I get
hey, you're a little fired up.
Impassioned.
You should be.
Yeah, but you guys have the references right there. We honor the contract and then some, to the tune of almost double. Canada has not. Alberta, do you want to be yoked with the country that hates you and doesn't honor their agreements? Be the place that honors its agreements. Be the place that benefits. Be the place that actually becomes a country of rugged independence. Hey, do you want your free speech? There's one way. Hey, do you want to have something resembling Second Amendment rights? There's one way. Do you want to have control of your own energy industry? There's one way. Do you want to stand in the face of communist tyranny that we see growing with the threat of China? There is one way. Do you want your people to benefit economically and to have a future for your children that isn't stifled socially, culturally, economically, across the board? There's one way. And I guarantee you many Americans would be happy to welcome you into the fold. You know what? Comment below. Americans, right now, comment if you would welcome Alberta with open arms. And Albertans, comment if it's something that you entertain. I know some details have to be hashed out, but this is a real opportunity. And I think that the United States should be looking at these opportunities as we move forward. This idea that, okay, the lines have been drawn with countries and so they're going to stay there. That's not what it was historically. And usually the reason for schisms were because people didn't share the same values. They no longer felt represented. Guess what? You're there, Alberta. What are you going to do about it? We're here to help. And also here to debate the annexation of Canada in general is James Carville, expert commentator who we have here on retainer, and our very own Nick DiPaolo. Welcome to the show, Nick. Thanks for taking the time. Mr. Carville, welcome back. With the Canadian election now finished, can we get your thoughts on Canada becoming the 51st state, which is what, of course, has been discussed, though I just laid out the case as to why it might be quite a bit.
Well, if we're going to make Canada the 51st state, I say we replace it. Get rid of Louisiana.
What?
We'll take Canada. You can have
Here's the big talk. This always happen with Nick DiPaolo. Big talk, Louisiana, Bayou boy. This man next to me, he's so stupid, he's the reason the packing peanuts haven't got instructions on them.
You're from a state, you get 3 inches of rain and 45,000 black people die.
You look at a tube of toothpaste and wonder how you get it out.
Some of them were on the roof waiting for a helicopter to pull them off, but you know why they didn't pull them off? They couldn't spell help. It said HEP.
You're crossing some lines, Nick DiPaolo. The people
What
die.
line is that, you chemo-looking...
I will grab you by your dirty fingernails and peel you like a shrimp.
Ugh.
Understand what I will do to him.
Mr. Carville, you brought up shrimp like 14 times.
If left alone.
Somebody touch you with a lobster when you were a kid?
When the laughing stopped. Everybody goes home after the show. No more 2-drink minimum. It's just you and a Raisin Cajun. On whose face do you think God will shine? I want you to think about that before
Did you
the
say
next word.
Glog?
God.
Oh, God. Yeah, God's one syllable, stupid.
Oh, you're still here? And you're still watching this on YouTube? You've probably noticed something is missing by now. I'm not here. That's because the Live Daily Show is now streaming exclusively on Rumble weekdays at 11 a.m. Eastern. Tune in there, where nothing is censored.